In the vast expanse of the Grand Teton National Park, photographs have emerged depicting what seems to be a colossal, flaming orange avian creature soaring above the park. Under any other circumstances, such images might be dismissed as mere fabrications, perhaps the work of CGI or a mere glitch in the camera. However, the location of this sighting raises more questions than answers. Now hear me out. It's the events that have occurred around this sighting that truly cement this footage as strange. The airspace where this bird was observed is situated directly above the Grand Teton National Park. Notably, this park had been temporarily shut down due to the discovery of a large crack. Yellowstone is renowned for housing North America's most formidable supervolcano. In fact, recent times have seen a surge in mini earthquakes, abnormal geyser activities, and a slew of reassurances from officials, attempting to quell the rising tide of concern from the public. The photographs in question were showcased in a video uploaded by a vigilant YouTube user, Mr. MBB333, known for monitoring global seismic activities. The footage is believed to have been captured by an unmanned webcam stationed near Jenny Lake, a picturesque glacial lake nestled within the Wyoming park. This YouTuber and various other platforms displaying the images have dubbed the creature a firebird or fiery bird. Many have drawn parallels between this creature and the legendary phoenix from Greek and Roman mythology. While some speculate that the creature might be a golden eagle, like me, which I'll get into here in just a moment, others suggest it could be a large hawk. However, the golden hue of the creature challenges both these theories. Magnification of the images doesn't offer much clarity. The creature's size, while appearing immense, could be a mere trick of perspective. Under regular circumstances, one might lean towards skepticism, but the events at Grand Teton suggest otherwise. Now get this. It's unclear whether this sighting happened just after or shortly before, but the park's rangers have indefinitely sealed off the vicinity surrounding a mysterious and expanding 100-foot-long crack in a rock buttress located above the Hidden Falls viewing area, alarmingly close to Jenny Lake. This crack, discovered on July 10th in 2018, has raised concerns among the park officials. They fear that a massive rock measuring 100 by 20 by 20 feet might detach and plummet onto the throngs of tourists frequenting the Hidden Falls viewing spot. To monitor the situation, time-lapse cameras have been set up, capturing images of the fissure every quarter of an hour. Additionally, a novel structure for motion technique is being employed, transforming photographs and GPS data into intricate three-dimensional models. The origin of the mystifying bird-like apparition photos remains uncertain. It's also ambiguous whether these images were procured by the aforementioned monitoring cameras. The sequence of events, whether the crack's appearance preceded the creature's sighting or vice. The creature's fiery hue hasn't drawn any connections to the Native American Thunderbird legend, unless one interprets it as a symbolic descent in flames over a potential rockfall or even a supervolcano eruption. Now, this is just my personal opinion, but to me it looks like a golden eagle. If you look at the color fluctuation and design on the golden eagle, it does seem to match what could be the same design, but possibly due to lighting conditions, it appears the way it does. There has been no definite statement made about this bird, what it's assumed to be, but the coincidence in events is strange. Of course, this is just one thing out of so many strange things that go on in this national park. Sure, every single national park anymore has strange things, but I'm specifically talking about the paranormal side. Beings and entities that tourists and visitors report seeing. An anonymous man reported that while visiting the park with his family back in 2015, He was terrified when his wife and him saw what they could only describe as a black gargoyle-like creature crawling out of a rock wall and then flying away into the woods. The man and his wife became violently ill afterwards, and after several days of severe vomiting, both had to visit the hospital. After a few more days, the symptoms seemed to clear up, and both him and his wife were fine. He explained that he does not believe there was a correlation between what he saw and the sudden illness his wife and him experienced. Other tourists have reported hearing strange noises at night around their campsite within the park. Some campers have reported about hearing their names being whispered just outside their tents at night, or what some describe as a strange metal scraping noise far off in the wilderness. In fact, missing 411 author David Paulides has even mentioned something similar and some of his missing person cases. Other users have specifically pointed out that on the South Rim Trail, there seems to be an array of what people are describing as bipedal, wolf-like creature sightings. More than likely, these are reference to a creature known as dogman, something that physically looks like what we know to be a werewolf. These creatures are being sighted all over the country and in other parts of the world. However, there is a large number of alleged sightings of this creature in and around Yellowstone National Park. A gentleman who wished not to be named was solo hiking on the outskirts of the park's boundaries. He described in horror how over a 4-day period he believes he was being hunted by a group of these creatures. He would only ever see them during the nighttime as they would get braver and come closer to his encampment. Apparently, one of the nights one of these creatures tried to pull the zipper down on his tent flap. It was nearly successful, with it just about to stick its arm in when he fired 3 shots at it and scared it off. Each night, he was miles away from the previous day's camp. He's certain they followed him, and had he stayed any longer than he did, he would have been their next meal. Other more disturbing reports have come from park employees and ex-employees as well. Years ago, I remember reading a story about a retired ranger who described finding a mauled adult male grizzly bear in a meadow. This was deep in the Yellowstone backcountry. He described that this bear, as large as it was, had been mauled by what appeared to be canine. Judging by the wounds and the ominous odor of wet dog and blood in the air, he didn't stick around for more than a couple of moments to survey the situation, but claimed he got a really bad feeling the longer he stood around. The body of the bear was right next to a thicket, where he believed that whatever killed this bear went off in that direction, judging by the odor. Now, it's unclear what possesses enough power and strength to rip apart an adult male grizzly bear. However, dogman are not the only creatures to be spotted. Apparently, there are a ton of Bigfoot reports coming from in and around the Yellowstone area as well. While we're on the topic of rangers and the backcountry, check this account out. The first time heard anything was in the mid-late 70s. An outfitter and I were riding up Fan Creek in the northwest section of the park. Up the drainage in Stellaria Creek, we heard a sound that just kept going and going. It was probably a mile away. It filled the whole valley up, kind of 1,000 like elk going to their death. I couldn't believe this thing had that much volume for that long a period of time. He had never heard anything like it, neither. A couple of weeks later, I was coming out from Sportsman Creek, taking a trail which comes out of Fan Creek. I was 11 miles back in, up high in a subalpine fir meadow complex. I was on a steep side hill with horses and in woods, but down below about 50 yards there was a kind of fairly flat meadow with dense subalpine thickets. There were these low fir growths that have a centerpiece tree, and then everything kind of cone shapes to ground. They were about 20 yards wide or so. The horses were flaring their noses and snorting, like they do when a grizzly bear is real close, but I could see fairly good all around, and I couldn't see one. So I started looking down below me, and the horses were really agitated. They're wanting to get out of there. I held them, but only with effort. I looked down to see where Grizz was, and I saw a deer at edge of thicket. All at once, it bolted and started jarring ahead perpendicular to me. Right then, coming out the other side, was this thing that was running on 2 feet. It was black like a bear, and it had long arms and ran. I think I held it there 30 seconds, but it got scared and then came out. It ran, but not super fast. It ran to another thicket and went at angle out of thicket to another thicket about 40-50 yards away. At this point, the creature was 75 yards down slope. It kept hitting these thickets trying to get away from me. I've never seen a bear do that. They'll always take a straight line. The first thing I thought was bear, but right away, I realized this black shaggy thing wasn't a bear. This thing was smart. I've never seen animal trying to pick up protection as it fled. I tied that together with sound had on other side of the drainage. It wasn't that tall. It looked like it was like 6 foot, maybe 6'5". The side of the face looked like it had a lot of fur. Most of the time, it was angling away, so I only got a good look at the head for probably the first 10 steps. The proportions of the torso, it looked more stocky than anything else. I noted the arms swung more than a human's would, and it didn't have elbows cocked. This was no hoax. I've ridden maybe 50,000 to 70,000 miles in the backcountry on horses, and you encounter a lot of bears when you do that. This thing, whatever it was, the horses looked straight down to it. The account was given to Colorado curator T.E. Stein during a phone interview with Bob Jackson in 2003. Recently, Jackson gave permission to submit his account to the BFRO. Jackson, also known as Action Jackson, was legendary among park supporters, notorious among outfitters and scofflaws for his enforcement of park rules and regulations. He retired as a Yellowstone Ranger in 2004. Few people have ever known Yellowstone's backcountry and its wildlife like Jackson. The BFRO has well over 40 reports of Bigfoot sightings from Yellowstone since 1995. And ladies and gentlemen, those are just the ones that people reported in. That doesn't take into account all the sightings that have never been told and never will. Even back in 2015, a YouTuber by the name of Mary Greeley uploaded a video of a supposed family of Bigfoot that was shot and filmed in Yellowstone. Of course, due to the controversial nature of the subject, it was scrutinized and met with much skepticism. I can't say I blame skeptics in this day and age with AI taking over everything and the ability to fake almost anything. It's hard to believe imagery or footage anymore. What's interesting about the footage is that it appears to show an entire family of large black humanoid figures. As I always say, could it be a hoax? Absolutely. But if it did truly capture a clan or family of Bigfoot, as the author claims, then we have some marvelous footage on our hands. In another tale, in a remote stretch leading into Yellowstone from Cody, 2 geologists found themselves in the midst of an inexplicable encounter. They were en route to the park for a summer employment opportunity. The driver, engrossed in navigating the winding roads, relied on his companion to keep him engaged with a lively narration of the passing scenery. As they rounded a bend, the vehicle's high beams suddenly cast light upon a large, shaggy figure emerging from a ditch on the southern side of the road. The distance between them and the creature was roughly 250 feet. Approaching at about 45 miles per hour, they noticed the creature's eyes reflecting a yellow hue, reminiscent of the glow seen in a dog's eyes when caught in the light at night. The creature then made a deliberate motion, turning its head and upper body away from the glaring headlights in a manner that seemed neither human nor bear-like. In shock, the geologist hit the brakes hard, Trying to comprehend the sight before them, they observed a hominid creature standing at an imposing height of approximately 7 to 7.5 feet and weighing an estimated 600 to 800 pounds. The creature, displaying no signs of obesity, stood upright with an air of comfort. It emerged from the ditch, reaching the edge of the metal barrier above a culvert. With 3 extraordinarily long and fluid strides, it crossed the 22-foot highway. Another 3 to 4 shorter strides followed, with the creature seemingly grasping the metal barrier with a long-fingered hairy hand swinging itself down into the box culvert or channel, disappearing from their view. The geologists halted their vehicle a mere 25 feet from the culvert, watching the creature's final descent into the channel's darkness. They then sped towards Yellowstone's East Gate, hoping to report their sighting to a ranger and possibly return for another look. However, the late hour meant no one was present at the gate. They continued to their destination, deciding to refrain from discussing their experience until the next morning to avoid influencing each other's recollections. Come morning, both geologists independently documented their observations from the previous night. Their accounts were strikingly similar, detailing even the sequence of the creature's steps as it crossed the road. They described a creature with a head that seamlessly merged into its neck, lacking the snout typical of bears. While the face remained obscured, both recalled glimpses of long hair covering parts of it. The eyes, reflecting a golden hue, were the only distinguishable feature. However, what remained vivid in their memories was the creature's size, shape, and unique fluid movement. The creature's physique was robust, with a blocky yet elongated head, a short, thick neck, broad shoulders, and a full chest. Its torso and hips appeared longer than a human's. As it traversed the road, its muscular buttocks were evident beneath the shaggy hair. Its thighs, longer in proportion than a human's, connected to large knees that functioned similarly to human knees. The creature's feet were proportionate to its large frame, with soles that seemed less hairy and darker in color. Its arms, extending from muscular shoulders, were longer than a human's, reaching its knees. The hands were large with long fingers, covered in the same shaggy dark brown hair as the rest of its body. Throughout the encounter, the creature remained silent and non-threatening, seemingly startled by the sudden appearance of the vehicle, but not overtly frightened. However, the same could not be said for the 2 geologists, who were left profoundly shaken by the experience. In the early 90s, there was a park ranger who worked at Yellowstone National Park. For several years, he had numerous encounters with bears, wolves, elk, deer, and other animals. However, one particular night would forever be etched in his memory. It was a late fall evening, and he was driving home from work on an old dirt road that ran alongside the Firehole River. The moonlight was so bright that it illuminated the river as if it were daytime, so he hadn't turned on his headlights. As he drove, something caught his attention. About 50 yards away, on the opposite riverbank, a figure moved. At first, he thought it was a large black bear, but as it came closer, he realized it was unlike any creature he had ever seen. The being stood upright like a human, but its arms were unusually long, reaching past its knees. As it moved, its head turned in his direction, as if it had been expecting him. It paused by some boulders near the shoreline, its gaze fixed intently on him. The ranger's heart raced as he recalled tales of Bigfoot sightings. A flurry of thoughts rushed through his mind. Should he stop? Should he continue driving? What would this creature do? Choosing to trust his instincts, he decided not to stop. He pressed the accelerator, hoping to put as much distance between him and the creature as possible. As he sped away, The creature's massive form obscured much of the moonlight, casting a large shadow on the road behind him. Once he reached home, still shaken by the encounter, he immediately called a fellow park ranger. She hadn't heard of any recent unusual sightings, but she did share stories from the previous summer. Local residents near Old Faithful Geyser had reported seeing Bigfoot-like creatures on their property. One account was from an elderly couple who saw a tall, hairy figure walk past their window. Another was from two young men who spotted a large, upright creature with long, dark hair near their garage. Though the encounter had taken place nearly 2 decades ago, the memory remained vivid for the ranger, primarily because of the intense fear he felt during those initial moments. Over the years, his curiosity only grew. He often wondered about the existence of such beings. Were there multiple species, or just one that could adapt its appearance based on its environment? He hoped that one day, science would provide answers. Until then, all he could do was remain skeptical and wait for more evidence. Yet another family reported something horrifying: werewolf-like creatures. On a family trip, they stayed at the Old Faithful Inn, nestled in the heart of Yellowstone. This historic inn, established in 1904, exuded an old-world charm, yet was equipped with all the contemporary amenities one would anticipate from a modern hotel. Having just settled into their room, one of the family members, let's call him John, decided to explore the grounds before dinner. John stepped out onto one of the many balconies of the inn, which provided a panoramic view of an open field below. A herd of elk grazed peacefully on the grasses. As he took in the serene scene, a sudden movement across the field caught his attention. Initially, John assumed it was another visitor strolling along one of the nearby trails. However, as he focused, he realized that this entity was sprinting upright, its legs moving at such an astonishing speed that they seemed to blur. Drawing nearer, the creature's features became more discernible. It was covered in dark brown fur, save for its hands and feet, which were devoid of any hair. Its face, surprisingly human-like, was also hairless, but its eyes were what truly captivated John. They glowed a bright, eerie yellow. What truly unnerved John wasn't merely the creature's appearance, but its overtly aggressive demeanor. When it was about 20 yards from the balcony, the creature, which John now thought of as a wolfman, halted abruptly. It growled, a sound that was both deep and high-pitched, unlike anything John had ever heard. The wolfman stood erect, maintaining intense eye contact with John. Despite the presence of other guests nearby, the creature seemed unfazed, making no effort to conceal itself. After what felt like an eternity, John mustered the courage to break the eye contact. The moment he did, the wolfman swiftly turned and darted into the woods, disappearing from view. And lastly, a family encountered what they described as a bat or gargoyle-like creature. While hiking in the back country of Yellowstone with their family, they stumbled upon a cave that appeared to have been shaped by water over the ages. Intrigued, they decided to venture inside, unaware of the potential inhabitants. No sooner had they entered, a chilling growl echoed from the depths of the cave. It was unlike any sound they had ever encountered, distinctly neither human nor bear-like. The father, sensing danger, urgently instructed everyone to flee. They rushed out without a second thought. Once safely outside, the mother recounted a harrowing experience. As she was making her way out, she caught sight of a figure darting towards her, bearing an uncanny resemblance to a gargoyle or large human-like bat. She described it as a tall, slender creature with wings on its back and menacing claws on its limbs. The creature's face remained obscured by the shadows in the cave's darkness. It's encounters like this that make hikers and explorers think twice about exploring certain parts of the park. And since you guys made it this far into the video, I want you to all comment down below. There's something in Yellowstone, so I know who made it to the end of the video. As always, I love you all, keep an open mind, and I'll see you all in the very next video.